Well, hello. Welcome back. Come on in. Have a seat. What can I do for you today? You bet. That actually is a really great question, and I'd be happy to demonstrate it. You're going to have to give me a minute to pull out some of my tools so that I can show you what I'm talking about. We'll be using geometric solids, and we'll also be using things like the Seal of Saturn, the Shekinah, or the Seal of Solomon. So get ready. This is going to be exciting. Hi guys. I'm really excited to be able to share this stuff with you today. This is super duper cool. But before we get into the geometry presented right here, okay, we're going to have to talk a little bit about the Seal of Saturn and some esoteric stuff, and why graphical depictions in 2 dimensions relate to things in 3 dimensions and vice versa. Okay? So let's start off with the Seal of Saturn. It looks like this. And this is the Seal of Saturn. It is drawn using a device known as a magic square. A magic square looks just like this. Now, the reason they're called a magic square is not because there's like oogada boogada and there's some magic going on there. Well, there is some math magic going on there, which is pretty cool. And in this case, the reason they're called a magic square is because regardless of direction, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, the square's sum will always equal the same amount. In this case, the square's sum equals 15 in all directions. The reason this is associated with Saturn is because the number 15 is tied to the astrological sign Capricorn. We see this revealed contemporarily in the tarot, where the 15th card is the Devil card or the Capricorn card. And Capricorn being ruled by Saturn, therefore references to the number 15 or the number 51 are also references to Saturn. The way to create the Seal of Saturn is simply following the numbers. But it's always helpful to have a tool to help you remember where these numbers are, because most people just don't unless they have a device. So as a result, I created this little rhyme for my students, and I'm going to share it with you right now. And incorporated or embedded in the rhyme is a principle of the esoteric communities that you may or may not find or study or be a part of. And that is the idea of mouth to ear, meaning that unless you have proper context, the information that you possess is useless. In this case, the poem goes like this. And I always tell my students, the first number's got to go outside the magic square because they're supposed to always remember to think outside the box. So there's your number 1, and the poem begins, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. This is the point, following this, that the esoteric principle comes into play about mouth to ear. He should have brought with him a gun. Now the question you want to ask yourself is, what kind of gun? Well, the person sharing this information with you would contextualize it and say, the gun is a reference to Dirty Harry and Clint Eastwood, and the only kind of gun Dirty Harry would ever carry is a .357 Magnum, right? So he should have brought with him a gun, .357, and then he'd have had a lot more fun. It only took 816 days to memorize the silly phrase. So it's taken all together, it's in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He should have brought with him a gun, because then he'd have had a lot more fun. It only took 816 days to memorize the silly phrase. Once you've got that under your belt, you know where the numbers are, and you can create your Seal of Saturn simply by tracing along the numbers. The best way to do that is to rewrite your square, or make sure when you put it together the first time that you put your numbers small and perhaps in the corners. That way you can put little dots in the center of all your boxes and keep your lines relatively straight. You can then draw it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are some folks out there that insist on this being unicursal, meaning that your pen never comes off the paper. You're welcome to do that. However, the classic presentation of the Seal of Saturn is in fact like this. And it has the end points sealed with little circles to keep the energy flow in there. So do as you will. It doesn't really matter, as long as you recognize that any presentation with a reference to this or any presentation which looks similar to this is probably a reference to this. So references to diamonds, perhaps, references to the lever W, references to the letter M, letters like V, or perhaps V and then W. Dos eques, right? Two X's. It goes on and on and on. There's multiple uses of this sigil. Nothing to be afraid of, really. You have to be asking yourself as an alchemist and as an esoteric practitioner, what exactly are they doing? How are they employing this, and what exactly are they drawing upon? And what we'll see is that as this seal is employed, it relates directly to the geometries which are presented in front of us. Finally, I just want to point out that once you've created this seal, all you have to do is just take the center line, divide it in half, and draw straight across from point to point, and you get yourself the Star of David, or the Shot-Kana, or the Seal of Saturn, or the Seal of Solomon. Okay? So let's take a look at the geometries, but first, in order to gain a real appreciation of three-dimensional geometry, it's often helpful to look at it in 2 dimensions. Each of these geometries have a name, though, and we're going to quickly discuss those. Starting from the left over here, this is a tetrahedron. It is built upon triangles. It has 4 sides, and its elemental correspondence is fire. Next to it is a cube. The cube has 6 sides. It's built upon squares, and its elemental correspondence is earth. Residing next to that is a octahedron, and it has, again, construction built upon triangles like the tetrahedron. It has 8 sides, and its elemental correspondence is air. And then next to that one, I've placed the icosahedron. It's also built on triangles. It has 20 sides, and its elemental correspondence is water. Unique among the 5 hedrals is the dodecahedron. This is often considered a very sacred object among ancient esoteric communities, largely because of how relevant it is to ourselves on a spiritual level, and because of what it reveals within itself. It is built on pentagons, which is a 5-sided object, and it has 12 of those. Now, if you do not have these kind of things available near you, these are made from quartz crystal. You might be able to get them online, or you could just save yourself some trouble and go to a role-playing store. Role-playing stores or bookstores that sell role-playing goods will have these dice, which actually are the 5 hedrals, plus you'll have 2 10-sided dice used as percentage dice. I always tell my students to keep those separate. Those are not participants in this dialogue because their geometric forms are not uniform. Okay, so they're over there. The 5 hedrals are over here. And in the center, we have our greatest tool for decrypting everything, which will be a 3-dimensional representation of this, the star tetrahedron, right here. All right, which is, of course, 2 of these tetrahedrons, one facing up, and then the other down, and then they're just put together. And a 2-dimensional representation of a star tetrahedron, then, is this, the Shut-Kana, or a Star of David, or a Seal of Solomon. And in 2 dimensions, the star tetrahedron looks like this. Now, the reason this is unique is because now we reveal that were we to take a line and draw along each of these points, it would expose the star tetrahedron as also being a hexagram. And obviously you can see the Star of David and the Seal of Solomon, the Shut-Kana, presented right there. The next form, this cube in 2 dimensions, the cube or hexadron, it's right here. Taken in 2 dimensions, it has 6 sides as it presents from edge on. I'd like to speak just briefly. There's a lot of fear-mongering going on about this cube. A lot of people have no idea really what they're talking about, and those of you who are just passing on this whole, ooh, Saturn and the cube and how horrible and we're all trapped, stop it. You're frightening the children. This is a geometry. It's sacred for a very good reason, because it is an exhibition of creative forces which are universal and ever present in our face, so much so that we simply are ignoring it. There's a video I have called Meditations on the Cube, and it demonstrates how this shape then transforms into dozens of other shapes, but most specifically it turns into this. And you see this symbol in Shinto temples, in Buddhist temples, in Hindu temples, in Catholic cathedrals, in Jewish synagogues, and Islamic mosques. You see it everywhere. It's through Christian churches. This is the unifying symbol of mankind. It tells a singular story relative to all of us. And fearing this symbol is absolutely childish. So it's far more important to come to terms with it and understand specifically what it means to you and how you can utilize it for the construction of your own cognitive experience here upon this earth. Continuing on after the cube, we have the octahedron, and that's like this. Seen from the top down with the top facing triangle, you can now see that it reveals it also is hexagonal when rendered in a two-dimensional perspective. And this is the icosahedron, or it's the 20-sided die. It's also rendered with triangles, and you can see also looking top down upon the first triangle in 2 dimensions, we again present with 6 sides. The realization of this has, and then of course the dodecahedron is the one object which I apparently can fit perfectly within inside of the icosahedron, which you see faintly drawn on the outside of it. It is a representation of the spiritual forces of the universe entering in. The dodecahedron itself, a representative of the element of spirit or prana or chi. Finally, all those forms put together form what is known as Metatron's cube. And this symbol you might see in multiple places, in use in extraordinary ways, scientific and otherwise. And taken in 2 dimensions, from the outside, again, we have a presentation of a hexagram. So let's look at these now, like this, and see how they relate to each other. We've already discussed this image. Let's take a look at how these shapes now relate to the Seal of Saturn. Keep in mind the Seal of Saturn looks like this. And so what we'll be looking for is some kind of representation, which would have a diamond there and perhaps a little bow tie thing going off to the side, or some kind of imagery off to the side, right? Perhaps, oh, that's right, more like this. A large diamond and then little flares off to the side, or any number of combinations of this. Using our greatest tool, the star tetrahedron in 3 dimensions, let's take a look at Metatron's cube. Let's take a look at what we can see. Edge on, you can see that the star tetrahedron transforms into a box with an X like this and T. So we can get an idea that any flag or symbol exhibiting a square with an X or a T or both in them would then be a representation of a star tetrahedron, and tying that back into Metatron's cube, right? Which also ties us back into the planet Saturn as a result of its association with the Seal of Saturn, as represented with the Shotgunah down here. So this is a 2-dimensional representation of this. Okay? If we turn this like so, now the story is revealed. Do you see it? There it is. There's your Seal of Saturn. A V down, a V up, and a line straight through the center. This is why the star tetrahedron is actually also the Seal of Saturn. It's merely a matter of perspective. You simply have to turn it in such a way so that you can see it. And there it is. This is also gives you then a clue artistically. Any use of diamonds or references to diamonds would then be a reference to Saturn. In addition, bow ties would be a reference to Saturn, the knot being the diamond in the center, and then the bow tie itself flaring out like that, which of course is why, for my students out there, why the Matt Smith Doctor Who thinks that bow ties are cool. Bow ties are cool because it's like wearing the seal of Saturn at your throat. And considering that Saturn rules the throat and ears, speech and hearing, it's highly appropriate that someone who does a lot of talking to get out of trouble, and who is named Time Lord, which to us then would be Kronos, the Lord of Time. Doctor Who then is Kronos, and he likes wearing bow ties because it's his seal, right there at his throat. Yeah, it's cool, right? And then finally, of course, we have the Shatkana. So you can see it as a cube with an X or a T through it, or both. You can see it as this kind of a bow tie, or in this shape also it is the Shatkana, just that the diamond in the center is slightly elongated. And you'll notice that historically our ancestors were very flexible in their thinking relative to the use of this seal, as is demonstrated in that meditation video. So, looking at each of these then, when we pick up the cube, look what's revealed inside the cube. On the outside we have this, and again you can see that the cube itself is like a self-referencing fractal, because as you turn it edge on with 3 of the 4-sided sides facing you, you see the cube within the cube. Then you can do other neat things with cubes. You can turn them like this so that they're edge on. And then some of you might be thinking, if you have a good mind for conspiracy theories, you might find this reminiscent of the Georgia Guidestones, right? Because it's a flat plane here, and a flat plane here, and a flat plane there, and a flat plane there. And so as you walk around the Georgia Guidestones, it looks like this, right? From the sides. So that's also a reference to the cube, surreptitiously. Any reference again to diamonds would then be a reference to the cube as well. And the cube taken edge on gives you 6 sides, like the Shatkana. Okay, the next one. This one's fun. Of course, top down, seen mine is slightly imperfect, but top down you can see that there are 6 sides on the planar sides, just as in the drawing. And when you look directly down through the top, see if I can get the camera to pick that up, you can see that there's a cube hidden inside of an octahedron, which is very cool. See that? There we go. There we go. So there's your cube hidden inside of your octahedron. It's very useful to have these tools. The transparency alone lends itself quite well. And then, of course, taken sidelong, you present with the diamond with the line through it. And, of course, we're looking for what? Oh, yes, a diamond with a line through it. That fits perfectly right inside there. So that gives you an impression that this might have an octahedron inside of it, seen edge on, right? Alacrity of thinking. Alacrity of thinking, being flexible and proactive in your associations. Okay? The last one here is the, or not the last, certainly not the last, but the next one is the icosahedron, and this is associated with the element of water. And you'll notice right away, when we turn it like this, we get the diamond in the center, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 off to the sides. So again, it forms an actual hexagram star, like this. Yep, there we go. Like that. See, there's the star. Boom, 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 boom. And of course you have the diamond, the extra large diamond in the center. So an icosahedron then also is a reference to Saturn, simply by virtue of its geometry. Or the Seal of Saturn then is a reference to this geometry. Either way, it's extraordinary. The final one here is the dodecahedron. 12-sided object associated again with spirit or prana or chi. If you turn it so that 3 of the 5-sided sides is facing you with the point directly at you, you will discover a couple wonderful things. There we go. In the center is a cube, right there. Bam! That is so cool. Yep, in the center is a cube. More than that, and this is one of the many reasons why this object was considered sacred anciently. Very, very, very sacred object. One of the many reasons, again, if you recall the magic square, all the sum of all the parts have to end up in 15. Well, we have 5, 10, and 15, right? The 3 sides facing you. 3 times 5 is 15, and again, any reference to 15 is a reference to Saturn, which is also a reference to the cube. So that within the body of this geometry, as presented optically, we have yet another reference to the cube, which is, of course, a reference to Saturn or a tetrahedron, right? So there's really nothing to fear here, and the thing that you should be asking yourself is why so many employ these as their tools for expression. I would say and submit to you the reason for it is because they are aware of the attributes, properties, principalities, and forms and structures upon which certain cognitive thought forms reside, and it is the basis of that knowledge which enables them to actively use these cognitive thought forms in such a way so that, well, they become very successful. That's all for your basic geometry, and I will be talking to you later. Have a wonderful day.